Hello everyone, welcome to Beginners Java lesson number 4. Um, in this lesson we're going to kind of go over some things that you should just be aware of, and we'll kind of do a bit of a review before we move on. So some of the things that you should be aware of is that uh, different so when we use string like this, and we just make a string equals hello. So when we use a string like this, uh, this string is not a primitive. And so to give you an example of what a primitive is, it's just int a equals 1. So what I mean by a primitive is this is just a value. There's really not much we can do. So if we hit a dot, there's not much we can do here. Um, it doesn't give us a whole ton of options. There's no and it's because it's primitive. It's only meant to store what we put in there. Meanwhile, string is a class. So classes we'll be covering in a little bit, and as you can see up here, class is used. Class is an object, and Java is an object-oriented programming language. Again, we'll get there, but we're not quite there yet. But if we take hello and we hit the dot key afterwards, you can see that there's a lot of different methods here that we can use. So one of the things that's very useful for starting to uh, play around with classes and methods is to start to get an understanding of what's available. So let's say I want to take the string hello and I want to set it equal to hello.toLowercase. Obviously, this is going to change this uppercase hello to a lowercase letters. So if I do a system.out.println and just write this to the console, it's obviously going to be lowercase. And where there's a lowercase function, of course there's a toUppercase function as well. So if I just change the, or you know what, I'll just copy paste this line and comment that one out, and just change that to upper. And when I change that to uppercase, just like that, and run it again, the same thing happens. As you can see now I have a very cool caps lock uppercase. So one of the other things that we can do is we can start to play around a little bit with other ideas, right? So where I said, so I'm just going to comment that out and make a whole new string. String, we're going to call this one numbers equals 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? So let's change, or actually let's keep that and put it up top and comment it out. And then we'll kind of just change that to numbers. All right, cool. So one of the things that people get confused about is strings, even if they're only filled with numbers, we can't do something like this, where we say int a equals 5, and then do, oh, I already have an a equals 1 up there. So let me just pull that down here. So, I don't know how that happened. There we go. So if I were to try to do something like a plus equals numbers, this obviously doesn't work. One's a string, one's a number. Now, however, there is a different type of int. It's called integer. And integer contains some classes, or contains some options. So if I were to now put a dot here, we have a few other options, right? But what's interesting is not what we're trying to do here. This isn't very interesting. What becomes interesting is when we use the integer class itself. We have this option to do parse int on a string. And so here we can place in numbers. And so if we do this, and let's just say a plus equal, oops, uppercase A there, plus equals that. And so now let's print out a equals, and then we'll put plus a, and we'll put plus numbers equals, and then plus numbers. And so we'll just give this a quick run. And so as you can see, we've successfully added the contents of a string to an integer by removing the value from it. And so in the event that you're interested in this sort of thing, you can pull up your web browser and go to Java and type in parse integer or something like that. And you'll hit the integer class in the Java docs. I try to refer to the Java docs whenever I can. And if you come down here to parse int, you'll see that there's a parse int option here. If we click on it, it gives us a fair bit of insight. And it says that when we pass a string as an argument, it gives us a numerical format, or a number back. And the number it gives us back is an int. And as you can recall, we are trying to parse an int. So that's just one example. And as you can see, we have two uppercase, two lowercase, and there's a lot of these different methods that exist. And you will get more familiar with these in time, but there are lots and lots and lots of them. So in just string, if we just look at the ones that are dot, you have two uppercase, two lowercase, compare to, concat, which is short for concatenation, which puts two strings together, contains, equals, index of, which we'll be using a fair bit, is empty, length, replace all, which takes a regex, split, which we might use a few times, starts with, substring we'll use a lot, trim we'll probably use. So there's a lot of different things inside of string. Integer, the only thing I really find myself using is parse int, and so occasionally min-max, but more realistically, toString is also the other way to go about that. So if I were to say something like, let's make one more example and just comment this out, because I don't want to kind of contaminate things. So if I do int a equals 10, string s equal, or let's do something like this. The year is 20, and we'll do something like this. So in the event that we wanted to add to that string, we can't just do s plus equals, and let's just change this to year. And we'll call this current year. And maybe this gets fed in from somewhere else. We'll talk about how that might work later. And so we can't just say current year plus equals year. Actually, due to the majesty that is Java, we actually can. I'm blown away that that's a thing in Java 10, that we can just add. Does that actually work? That's amazing. So this didn't work in older versions of Java, but apparently due to some improvements in string utilities, that absolutely does work. That is flabbergasting. Um, and the reason why and what's actually going on behind the scenes is there's a function being called. And essentially, it probably sees the number or the type int being called, and what it's trying to do is it's trying to do integer dot parseInt year like that, or something very similar. It is expecting an int, so it is an allowed type, but that is I'm blown away that that's a thing. Or no, I'm sorry. It was trying to do integer dot toString year. So it was trying to do something like that, and so it's the same thing. I'm really blown away that that's something that happened. So okay, but maybe we end up having to solve a problem, and I don't know if I want to get into that. No, I think it's better that I just kind of review. There are great uses for the integer.toString method that we're going to get into later. But for now, let's just kind of leave it alone. We'll follow up on that in another 5 or so lessons when we start getting into arrays, or another 7 lessons or so. So for now, let's just kind of review. We have some basic types, and we call those primitives. Those are int, double, boolean. God, my phone's ringing, and I have no idea who it is, so I'm not going to answer it. So we have int, double, boolean. There's actually a few more. Why is this not coming to mind? I mean, there's ones we haven't covered, like float, but those are kind of the most basic ones. Char, sure, those are going to be the basis of what we're doing. So that's just an integer, floating point number, true/false, and a single character. So that's basically what your primitives are going to be. There's other ones that are probably slipping my mind right now. Oh yeah, so there's long, which we didn't discuss, which is actually just a long number. And a long number, by that I mean that the maximum length is just bigger than an int. It can store larger numbers than an integer, but it can be as small as 1, 0, negative, a billion, whatever you want it to be. By the same merit, there's one called short. You probably won't use short that often, so I'm not going to get into it here. But for now, I think that that's going to cover the vast majority of primitive types. And then in more advanced types, these are typically called wrapper classes, but we haven't really gotten into what a class is, so I'm not going to delve too deep into that. I believe that there's one for each of these, right? There's integer that we covered. There's double, which, believe it or not, has basically all the same stuff as integer. It just applies to the double type. I think that there's long. I never really use longs, but yeah, so there's long. Again, it's the same thing as integer and double. It just, you know, so if we do like long dot parse long, you know, it has all the same stuff there. Boolean, so as you can imagine, this has pretty much all the same stuff. And And then char, I actually think is character. So if we do character dot, and so again, this isn't really that great. There's a few things like is digit, which might be useful if you need to know, like, is what I have in this variable a digit without having to go through a big long to do. But we'll kind of get into that later. And again, this is sort of the same thing. But the notable add-on here is string. So again, this is just int, double, long, boolean, char. And when I just write these out this way, I'm just kind of matching these one-to-one with what's above. And the reason I'm doing that is just because I want you to know that you can use these interchangeably. Or you can use, not interchangeably, but you can use them similarly. And lastly, string is just one, or we'll just say two or more letters within quotes. And obviously, when you use it, the quotes aren't shown, whereas character is single quotes. So to wrap this up, we'll just kind of go over, or quickly rehash the order of operations, and it's just P, E doesn't technically exist, but I still like to put it because it falls under parentheses. M/D, A/S. Left to right, and so that's just your order of operations. There's a lot of different ways that you can add things. So if we want to add 1 to a number, we have 3 options. So we can say something along the lines of, we'll say that we have a variable called a, and so we'll say int a equals 0, and we want to make it 1. We have the option of a plus a equals a plus 1. We won't be using that type of notation at all if we can avoid it. We have the option of doing a plus equals 1, and we have the option of a plus plus. And again, just to review, not going to be used. Sometimes you'll see that from more beginner coders. This is called appending. And with this, we can say a plus equals 5, a plus equals 1, a plus equals -1, whatever we really kind of want there. But this is known as incrementing, and this is only by 1. Alright, so we're going to wrap it up there. I know that a lot of that was just kind of talking in the comments and going through what exists, and I've now actually commented out everything in the entire program, so that feels weird. So I guess I'll just kind of uncomment these. Oh, so a cool little note, you see I just highlighted multiple lines. If you hold down Alt on your keyboard, you can highlight multiple lines like that. And makes it a lot easier to just uncomment a block or comment a block. So when you have all these lines highlighted, you can add, stuff to every line at once. So you can do like string dot value of, or whatever you want to do. So yeah, all right, that's going to be it. If you have any questions, feel free to ping or to harass me in some way, shape, or form. My name is Damien, and thank you for watching. If you like what I'm doing, like or subscribe. I'm not going to say that often, by the way, but like, yo, bro, smash the like button, and if you get the idea. All right, see ya.